Welcome to this week's episode of the Villa Pride Down Under podcast, an Aston Villa supporters podcast brought to you from Australia. This week we have our usual three, myself, Tess and Ryno. How are you boys?
Doing good. I noticed there's an extra screen over there, Spud.
Yeah, and for the first time on the Villa Pride Down Under podcast, we have our first guest, Mr. Paddy Kelly from the Love Upon McGrath podcast. Paddy, welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's a privilege to be your first guest, and it's great to talk to you guys because I listen to your podcast every week as I do with most Villa podcasts, and it's great. It's great to have so many that we can avoid the mainstream media and listen to what Villa fans have to say. So thanks very much for being a welcome addition to the Villa podcasting family.
Without trying to embarrass you, Paddy, like when we decided what format we were going to take the podcast, and we decided a few weeks ago that every maybe 5 or 6 episodes we'd like to bring a guest in, just to kind of mix it up. But we all agreed pretty early that we wanted you to be our first guest because yourself and Neil, you've been a huge help to us setting up the podcast, and you particularly for me as well, doing in a separate podcast that I done. You're a big help. So you're definitely the first guy we wanted on. But like your help has been really, really appreciated, and you're always there for a question for myself and Neil for Tess. I know Neil's helped Tess a lot with the technical side of stuff as well. So thanks very much to the both of you, and just to get you on for a few words really means a lot to us to have you here.
No problem at all, and I appreciate you. You guys are up late at night to get me on, so happy to be here.
Paddy, we're gonna kind of start off with I'd like to get your opinion on the transfer window so far. Obviously, myself, Tess, and Ryno have kind of discussed it so far, but we're not going too deep into it. Just do you want to give us a little breakdown of your overall so far, how you found the transfer window as a whole, both in outgoings and incomings? Sorry, just to tell us how you think it's fared so far.
Well, I think it's like most football games is the tale of two halves. We started off really well, and it's tapered off a little bit. I think my only concern at the end of the transfer window, as we get towards the end of it, is there's still a little bit of what people assume to be dead wood that are still there that we need to ship out. And I don't mean to be disrespectful in saying or calling them dead wood. It's just a case of the club has outgrown them, and they've obviously will be a great asset to some other club, but we will need to move them on. But I think in general, how we've strengthened our squad is, it's absolutely beyond belief, and we should all be pinching ourselves at what's actually happening here, because it's like watching one of those Netflix episodes of a world beaten team, and then realizing, hang on, this is Aston Villa, and this is happening in real life, because we're signing world class talent. We're paying huge fees for incomings. We're signing like the best left back in the Champions League from last season. We signed 2 players from Juventus. We never in our lifetime thought we'd be signing 2 players from Juventus. Obviously not their main stars, but still it's 2 players from Juventus. And and you're paying 50 million for an absolute beast of a midfielder in Onana. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on. We've obviously lost some big players like Moussa Diaby. I think that was going to happen at some stage. And obviously Douglas Luiz. So I think in order to make these signings, we do have to take some little bit of a hit, and that hit for us is obviously Douglas Luiz and Moussa Diaby. While I never really fell in love with Moussa Diaby, I'm absolutely heartbroken that it's Douglas Luiz that's gone out, because we've seen him come on from such what we thought was an ordinary footballer coming in to being absolutely brilliant by the time he left. I know the back end of last season was tough, but it was tough for everybody, and it didn't really come together for him. But I think in the year before Christmas of last year, I think he has been by far and away one of our best players, and I for one am really, really sorry to see him go.
Yeah, me too. I'm really sad about seeing Douglas Luiz go. I was a bit of a Dougie fanboy, to be honest, when I spud, and when I knew he was going, really disappointed, because I felt like he was being instrumental over the last 2 seasons, especially since Emery came in, and the way that he was playing more in his position. I felt like this is somebody we could help build our team around, somebody who's a playmaker and can score goals and could create those assists. So I was also really disappointed.
Tess, you touched on.
It's It's all about who we replace him with, and at the moment we've replaced him with someone who's already there in Youri Tielemans, and he's in pre-season shown that he can be that, great defense splitting passes and ball winning midfielder that we hoped he would be. So I think it's up to him to step up to the mark, especially until Boubacar Kamara comes back into the fray. So what a huge midfield that's going to be with Onana and Kamara when he comes back in. But in the meantime, Youri Tielemans, as you well know, Spud, is one of my favourite footballers, and I'm so delighted to see him, perform so well in pre-season, and to make that, I would imagine, to make that position his heading into the new season.
And Ryno, when you look at the team now, seeing someone big like Onana in that team, it makes a big difference, doesn't it? Like, I mean, he's towering anything else on the pitch, and I think I know it's something we've said in this podcast a long time, on previous podcasts we've done together as well, where like the profile of the players, we were a small team, like without Mings really, like, and Onana, I would say a lot of people are saying he came in as Luis's replacement. I don't think so. I think he was just brought in for who he is. I think Paddy's definitely hit the nail on the head about Youri Tielemans offering what Luis can there. When you look at that, do you expect more height to be added to the team right now?
Yeah, it's definitely something we've lacked, that physicality, height. And when Mings went out early last season, genuine aerial threat, ball winner in the air, and we probably missed that a fair bit, because obviously we know Pau Torres is a great footballer, but a very different defender compared to Mings. Konza the same, probably better with ball at feet. So I think Onana coming in is massive for us, and just that physicality. I'm interested to see how that midfield sort of shapes up. I am apprehensive about Dougie leaving and how that sort of plays out for us. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. But the benefit is, obviously, Onana and Tielemans know each other from the international team, so playing for Belgium together. So hopefully that'll stand us in good stead and we can sort of hit the ground running. But I think you can see in the friendlies, they're working on a fair bit of the play and the patterns, and we're not quite up to speed yet, but it's getting there. But I think, we've got all the talent and the attributes there to really be strong in midfield this year.
Without going too deep into it, lads, I'll ask the three of you the same question. But Tess, I'll start with you. Take the results and all that aside from the pre-season now. When Unai Emery looks back at pre-season and where we are now, what do you think his take will be from it? Do you think will he be happy where the team are at now, going 1 week out from the season?
I'm not sure. I think he might still think that we might need to do some business in attack, to be honest. And I'm just basing it on what I've seen on the pre-season so far. We've seemed to be having young players and players that have come in learning the way that we play, the structure we play. However, we haven't looked really good going forward in terms of, we've had small, intricate plays where we can counter-attack, but it doesn't look like we've really got somebody who's going to be finishing if Ollie's not there, to be honest, at this stage. So he might be looking at, do I need to get somebody in an attack? Now, it just depends on, again, I don't want to mention the name, but it just depends on the backup strikers. Cameron Archer, I'm still here and there with Cameron in terms of can he do it for us in the Premier League? And then we know we've got the Jhon Duran, who is that backup at the moment, if you like. We just don't know what's going to happen with him at this moment. So, yeah, really difficult to know. I think midfield-wise we look okay, and in defence we look okay. If anything, he might want to bring one more defender in to make us a bit more solid, because he knows we're getting Tyrone Mings back. He knows that we've got Boubacar Kamara to come back. And so we've got quite a strong midfield, and we've got numbers at the moment as well. The young right-back, Nedeljkovic.
Yeah. I was working with a couple of Serbian lads.
Is it his name? Is that his name?
Yeah, I was working with a couple of Serbian lads, and they're actually Red Star fans. And I was like, lads, how do you pronounce this? And they have absolutely guaranteed me that you have to pronounce it Nedeljkovic, almost like a double barrel. It's a single name, but they said you pronounce it almost double barrel, so it's Nedeljkovic. So,
Nedeljkovic. And looking back as well, we've got the young boy who I've been really impressed with in this pre-season, Lamar Bogard. Been really, really impressed. He understands the assignment, and we've got backup goalkeepers in Gauchi, who seems to be stepping up, and Zyke as well, who looks pretty good as well. They both look pretty good to me, and I would probably want to play both of them instead of Olsen. So I think he'd be pretty happy. Main place would be more than likely in attack, if anything.
What about yourself, Paddy? Like, obviously, Unai Emery and his team are going to look at things in a different way than we are. Like, as fans, we're going to look at how they're performing on the pitch, but they're going to be looking at numbers and diving deeper into what they can carry going forward into the season. What do you think would be the discussion away from the cameras with the coaching staff and stuff? Do you think they're happy with the squad? No, not so much the squad of players, but where the squad or athletes' performance levels going into new season, or would you think they'd be expecting to be a little bit further ahead after a big tour and stuff?
Well, I think looking from the outside in, he strikes me as an absolute perfectionist. So it's a question of when is he ever happy?
Yeah.
I think if we went and won the league, he would find something wrong. He just strikes me as that kind of character. I think the word we're looking for is, at what stage is he content with what he has, and I don't think he's there just yet. I think we will see a couple of signings before the transfer window, maybe even 3. If depending on the moving parts that are there, if Dendoncker goes, if Olsen goes, if he decides Nedeljkovic goes out on loan again, which I don't think he will, just options that are there. If there's other options, like if Moreno goes, there's no need for replacement because we already have his replacement in there. But the big elephant in the room is up front. We've seen without Ollie Watkins throughout the whole of pre-season that we're in trouble in that department. The goals are difficult to come by. Not necessarily that they're all going to come from Ollie Watkins, but him running the lines, running the channels, holding up the ball, bringing every other attacking option into play creates the goals, and that just didn't happen with Cameron Archer it did for a certain extent to Morgan Rogers, but he's not the finished article to do that job up there for us. I've no doubt in the future that if Unai Emery decides that that's where he wants to play him, that he will do a similar job as he's done with Ollie Watkins in converting him from a mediocre striker to being world class, which is basically my opinion on what's happened with Ollie Watkins. Some people will disagree and say he's always been good, but I think he's got 100 times better under Unai Emery. But yeah, I don't think he's content just yet. I do think one of the more interesting ones we've been linked with, I'm going to butcher his name, but I'll try because a Dutch friend sent it to me. Luterel Kutreya from Feyenoord seems to be a huge target for us. Bit of a Swiss Army knife. He's a right back by trade, can play on the right side of a 3, can play in defensive midfield, played 5 or 6 games last year at left back. So that could be the final piece of the puzzle in defence, depending on how long Tyrone Mings is out for. And also the one that hasn't gone away is the link with Hermoso, who's injured at the moment. So he's obviously a free transfer waiting for somebody to snap him up. But they're the 2 imminent ones that are choices that you would expect to be explored over the next week or so. And then the striker one just comes down to him figuring out how happy, if at all, Jhon Duran is to play the role he has been doing. Because we've all seen him start games and go missing. But when he comes off the bench, he's been absolutely phenomenal and a game changer. So he's a difficult character, obviously, to manage. But it's up to him, and he's obviously given a few hints that he wants to move with the stuff that he did with Chelsea social media and then making the iron sign on his Instagram. We have to take into consideration that he's still a child, and children do stupid things, and there's a lot of growing up to be done there. So he needs to decide where he wants to be, and Unai Emery needs to decide if he's the man that's going to take us forward in the absence of Ollie Watkins, if there is an absence.
Yeah, and like you kind of only have to look at like these players, these personalities like Jhon Duran. It's not new to football, They just need to be managed a little bit different, because if Ferguson had given up on Cantona at the first sign of trouble, we wouldn't have seen his genius, I mean, Cantona was mad, exactly. But like you only have to listen to Roy Keane and Gary Neville, and they talk about what Cantona gets away with that the rest of them mustn't. And Ferguson or Keane was saying the players didn't have a problem with that, because that's just how you had to manage his ego, because he was a different character to them. And I remember watching a thing there with Lee Sharp, and he was doing a dinner speech. That's what he does now. He goes around and does speeches and gets paid to do dinner talks. and he's talking about the time that he does that Cantona done the kung fu kick, and he says usually Gary Pallister used to get all the players to do a lap to warm down, but Pallister said to all the players, no warm down today, lads, because this is going to be absolutely brilliant when Ferguson goes off in the dressing room after the kung fu kick. So he said, but they all went into the dressing room anyway, and next minute Ferguson was like, Pallister, my grandmother could do a better job than you at half. And he said he just went through the whole team and just ate them all. And then he looked at Canton and said, Eric, you can't be doing that, son. So look, I know things are changing and stuff, but these mad footballers have been around for a long time, and sometimes they're the best footballers. Unfortunately, their personalities just. So if Emery can find a way to control that, he'll know if he's willing to put that effort in. But I think we'd all agree straight off the bat that Duran is probably the ideal backup if we could get him to settle down. He offers something.
I think you hit a good comparison there by talking about the past and the the talents that were in the team that just needed to be nurtured.
Yeah.
I had a manager years ago that used to say that these guys needed to be breastfed and looked after.
Yeah.
But in those days, in the 90s and even up until the last 10 years, you were operating off 14, 15 players. You're now looking at 25, 30 players that need to be kept happy.
Yeah.
And to invest time in just one player when you've got that many players to look after is very, very difficult in the modern game. So the player needs to decide for himself whether he wants to be part of what's going to be hopefully a magical season, and the potential to be remembered as an absolute legend for this club to play Champions League football for the first time. It just the mind boggles at what he's trying to do and what he's trying to engineer his way out of, because the opportunities are going to be there. Like he would have played the last few games if his head was in the right place. He would have been playing in an 81,000 seater stadium yesterday, and would have been the pillar of our attack. But the head just doesn't seem to be in the right place, and it's disappointing from a fan's point of view, because we've really looked after him. You remember that welcome video on the big screen of Villa Park when we had Juan Pablo Angel talk to him. There's so much been done to and he's done some silly things, crashing cars and some other rumored things around Birmingham, that he just needs to settle down. He just he could actually do with somebody managing his affairs and managing him on a day-to-day basis, and hiring someone just to say, hang on a minute, do you think you should be doing that now? Calm down, and someone to look after his social media, that he's not pissing off the fans, because at the end of the day, if you piss off the fans, it's very hard to come back. So you have to do an awful lot of work on the pitch once you piss off the fans, which he's already done. So it's an interesting few weeks ahead to see what he decides to do, but that is a huge elephant in the room for us.
Definitely. And
just imagine Emery does decide that we're going to work with him, he's going to settle down, knuckle down. The fans will still get behind him, right? He comes in, works hard, scores a couple of goals, because he scores worldies, he can do it. The fans will be right behind him again. And that's what Juan Pablo Angel was saying to him. You work hard and you put the effort in front of those supporters. They're with you 100%, and we will be. I think we will 100% be behind him if he comes in, knuckles down, and scores a couple of goals, starts to play the way Emery wants him to play. In terms of the way his behaviour is, maybe bring somebody from his family over. Make sure somebody with his family's with him, not just his agents, or because we don't know what his background is there. But usually, if you bring somebody who's your family over, for the season or something like that, bring mum or uncle or someone over to help him settle in. So he's got somebody who's close by. That might help him to kind of settle down as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, I'm happy to chaperone him, boys. No problems. I'll take that assignment.
Well, you're close by. I can see Villa Park's in the background, so you're the ideal person.
Ryno, there's the rumours today seem to be they're probably stronger than rumours at this point. It looks like Diego Carlos is going to be heading for Passengers now down in Fulham. Heading into the new season, do you think this Diego Carlos going out the door would snowball a few transfers? Do you think there would be someone coming ready to step straight in? Do you think that's already kind of in the fireworks?
I would say so. I would say if Diego Carlos goes out, I would say it'd be pretty quickly. We'll find out who's coming in. Paddy's already mentioned the guy from Feyenoord, the Dutch right back. But I think maybe, someone who can fill in at centre back as well. Like, I'd be sad to see Diego go, but it hasn't really worked out for him at Villa. Big expectations when he came from Sevilla, and then he obviously got injured early on, bad injury with the Achilles, and it's just never really got going for him. And I think it's taken him a long time to recover from the injury, but to adapt as well to the Premier League. Every time I've watched him, he's had some good games, some really good games, but I just feel like it probably lacks a bit of the pace for the Premier League. Great defender, but yeah, I disappointed to see him go out. But I think we'll get someone in, an adequate replacement in to fill that gap. Tyrone Mings obviously is going to be back this season. Hopefully he's fully fit and over his injury. But yeah, Diego Carlos go in. I would expect someone else to come in.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and it's Carlos again. And we talked about this last week, Ryno, as well. Carlos isn't. He's not Emery's signing, so like he may not want him, And I was at the game where Carlos got injured, and it was a bad injury. Like you knew straight away that he was when he dropped onto the ground. It was the kind of late on in the Everton game, and I don't think he's ever had a proper run of it since. And he's had some brilliant performances for us. He was very good against Man City. He was very good against Arsenal, but we need a bit more consistency with staying fit and performances going forward. And I think Emery's kind of showing that he's looking more to the future, getting Carlos's wages and age off the books, and that's kind of.
I think the wages is a big one as well, but the form of Konsa as well, isn't it? Ezri Konsa, just when Mings went out, he just stepped up and has been probably our most consistent performer, isn't he? And, like you say, Pau Torres was an Emery signing, Diego Carlos wasn't. So he's obviously going to play Torres. So he's probably just squeezed Carlos out. And I think the wages coming off the books will be pretty handy as well. I would assume he's on a fair bit of wage there. So yeah, but Ezri Konsa coming back in as well after the Euros experience, and hoping for another good season out of him.
And fair play to Carlos. He wants to go and play football. He could easily at his age just sit down and take that wage, but it's good for him that he wants to go and play Premier League football. Lads, we started last season a lot of positivity. We had some great signings. Pau Torres, Diaby, Tielemans. It was real positive. It ended very positively as well, of course, so I don't want to defer from that a bit, but we ended up having a really bad start, which kind of deflated things, and we're within the it started off really bad on the Thursday when the news came through that Buendia had done his ACL in the training. Then we obviously played in Newcastle, and when Mings went off with the ACL, and then obviously we got battered. I think the scoreline is irrelevant. I just think it just didn't work that day for us. And we bounced back really well, Paddy. What are you looking towards next week for West Ham? What would you see? Are you looking for performance? Do you think we just need to get 3 points on the board? Or would you be happy to go down there and just get a point and get on the board early and start moving on towards the Arsenal game? Or what are you kind of looking for out of that first game?
Well, it's a venturing into the unknown as well, because they've made a good few decent signings, and they're going to be a different beast under Lopetegui. So, we're obviously going to be the guinea pigs, the first people to go there and play them in a competitive game. So, I think it would be unfair to tell you what I'm looking for. I think after the match would be the best time to say, was a point good enough?
Yeah.
Should we have got 3 points, or look, we've been beaten here today and we've been beaten by a better team, and let's move on. And I don't envisage that there's going to be a huge change at West Ham. It's going to take a bit of time, but a week out with the signings we've made, I would quite happily snap your hand off for a 95th minute winner and to win this any way possible, because points on the board are most important at the start, especially when there's a break of a week between games, as opposed to the back end of it when we get into September, where we're going to be playing midweek games every second or third week in the Champions League, and then we've got obviously the Carabao Cup comes into play. So it's a long haul. This is a marathon. There's a guaranteed 8 games, and depending on the draw, I'm going to say it now, it's nearly impossible for a decent side not to qualify for the next round of the Champions League. So I'm budgeting there's going to be at least 10 Champions League games played this year. So it's going to be a long haul. We're going to need bodies. We're going to need people who have who are in this for the long haul and well able to fight their way when called upon. And that's what's getting me about Jhon Duran, because I really truly believe that when games are put to bed, he's the kind of signing that will come on and give Ollie Watkins that break, and he will get plenty of time. Not time that he's going to get now at West Ham, that they sign Fulkrug, because he's just not going to go in there, because that's a Lopetegui signing. He's going to go in there from the start. We all know Chelsea's a shit show and he's not going to get it there. But for me, to answer your question, it's just all about what way West Ham embrace the game next week, and if they do change much, they've had plenty of time together. Obviously, Fulkrug has just come in at the back end, but he was flying at the Euros. He looked really, really strong, and he's going to be a difficult opponent for us. So they will be a different beast to what they were last season. Obviously, a completely different style of football, and it's how quick they adapt to that. But I hope and expect that we can get a narrow win out of it.
That's very good. And what about yourself, Tess? Like, are you kind of looking for more points or looking for performance? Or are you just kind of
both, really?
Will you take it for what it is and just say, right, it's the first game, and look what happened the first game last season?
Yeah, you have to take it for what it is in the first game. I wouldn't I'd be lying if I said that I'm not looking for a performance, though. I'm looking for some performances, and I'm looking for a result, only because it's early in the season. It's the first game of the season, and would be nice to just have that first game under your belt and get that 3 points. Because I suppose when I looked at the fixture list when it got released, I was looking at it and I was like, there's 3 points here, and we might get 6 here, and then that's a tough game. And then I was having a look at it like that, and I was like, well, if we can get a really good start, that'll set us off nicely for getting that winning confidence. We haven't quite got that in the preseason so far, so it'd be nice to just sort of have that 3 points under the belt and a bit of a performance, and really just because of competition for places, because that's what we've got now. We've got players there who are ready to step in and try and fight for a place. So yeah, just a little bit of both, to be honest with you.
Ryno, would you take a point on the first day, like going down there? Because it's West Ham's a tough place to go. I know, Paddy, you've been to the game, you've been to the stadium a few times and stuff, and it's not really a great football experience, you've said to me in the past, Paddy. Ryno, do you think just go there, get a point, or do you think, because as Paddy said, they have brought in a lot of new players, a new manager, should that be an opportunity for us to go and take 3 points, and get off to a strong start?
I take a point, definitely take a point now away from home. Going back to your question earlier in the pod about, where does Emery see where we're at? I think he'll have another couple of weeks before the season kicks off, getting Ollie Watkins, Martinez back in, all the guys who've been at the Euros, Konza, get those guys back in. And don't forget, our midfield's had quite a few new additions in the middle there, and it's such an important part of the game, isn't it, the midfield now? It's not like years ago where it'd be, boot the ball long, get it down the flanks. Now it's it's all through the middle. So I'd take a point. I think West Ham have made some really good signings. I think they're going to be, like Paddy says, completely different under Lopetegui compared to Moyes, but it will take them time to adapt and get their rhythm. So probably a good time to play them. But I think we're in the same boat, even though Unai Emery's going in, second full season, that he's got a lot of new players, and just getting those guys to adapt and gel and to work in his formations and his patterns is going to be interesting. I think the midfield to start off with, I'm looking forward to seeing who he's picking first game. But yeah, I think there's a lot of work still to be done for us. I feel like a word that's out there at the moment on social media is undercooked. Yeah. And I'd agree with that myself. From what I've seen of us, I think we look undercooked, and I think a few more games would have been handy, but it is what it is, and we've got to get on with it now. And yeah, it's tough game against West Ham down there, and I'd take a draw straight off the bat.
Paddy, do you want to tell us a little bit about a trip to West Ham, like what for an away fan's perspective, and what the fans can kind of expect? Because I know you haven't really sung the praises of the stadium in the past, but do you want to just give the lads a bit of a breakdown of kind of what you've taught me privately, like how for the experience overall?
Yeah, well, it's just a very difficult place to get to. You think of something that's in London, it's very easy to get to, but you get off the tube and you've got to walk through a shopping centre and through an industrial park. Eventually, you see the stadium, you think you're nearly there, and then you got to walk around the bloody thing to find the away end, and and then you sit in your seat and you're looking for the binoculars to have a look and see who's playing, because you're a million miles from the pitch. It's not a football stadium. I would imagine there's a lot of fans there that don't want to be there. It just doesn't feel like a football stadium. I don't mean to be pissing West Ham fans off. I think in general that's their own opinion.
A few of them have said it themselves. Yeah, I've heard a few of them say it on. Like I don't think you're being mean like by saying that. I think that's probably 80% of the fan base's own take on it. Especially because Upton Park was supposed to be such a classic stadium. Like,
oh, it was an absolutely brilliant stadium. I loved going to it. But what you have to understand is that this is another fault of modern day football, that you've got a team playing in a stadium that's purpose built for athletics, that now is financially stable because of obviously what they've been given and gifted there, and they can make that stadium work 7 days a week with conferences and concerts, and like they even brought Major League Baseball there last year and this year, and sold thousands upon thousands of tickets. So there's so much you can do with a stadium of that size. But unfortunately, its main purpose is not fit for purpose. It's not a football stadium. And as someone like me that wears glasses, I just found it a horrible experience trying to figure out what was going on at the other end of the pitch. If you remember, when we went there last year, it was the Leon Bailey kicked the ball off a hand that was outstretched.
Oh yeah,
and he didn't give the penalty. We hadn't a clue what was going on there. Not a clue. No, nothing on the screen, no way of knowing what was going on, and nobody in the way end, because it was at the under end of the pitch, knew what everyone was screaming for. But that's just unfortunate, and it's probably one of the worst away day experiences of the Premier League ground. I think I've been to nearly all of them at this stage. Yeah. Ipswich, I think, is the one I've left to do for this season. But it's just a horrible experience, and you come out of it, you get back to wherever you need to go after the game, and you're just knackered from all the walking and steps and everything else and it takes to get into the stadium. But it's just badly organised, I suppose, with public transports, and you can't get a taxi up to it, or you can't drive up to it, obviously. So it's just one of those ones where if you had a chance to miss it, I'd miss it, and I'm the kind of person that does everything once, so I got there once, and I've no desire to go there again.
Tess, obviously, you're from London yourself. West Ham, you're from Fulham, is it?
Yeah, so I'm from Fulham.
Have you been to any of the West Ham games, or have you been to any of the London games?
Yeah, no, I used to do some work at Chelsea back in the younger days as one of the stewards and stuff, and at Fulham. Fulham was actually a really nice stadium to go and watch a football match, because it's quite, you're quite close in. I haven't been there for years, but it was sort of when Mohamed Al Fayed was the owner down there. But I used to go to that stadium, and it just really nice, small stadium. You can see the pitches right close to you. I remember going there actually to watch. We went to watch Villa against Fulham. We lost that game. We lost the game. I can't remember which game it was and what year it was. We went there to Fulham, and I went to go and watch the game there. But yeah, been to Stamford Bridge as well. Actually, Stamford Bridge is probably about 500 meters away from my mum's house where I used to live and stuff. So right in the heart of Fulham Broadway. And I also remember, like, when I was younger as well, there weren't many Chelsea fans around, apart from around the local areas before they sort of had Roman Abramovich and stuff like that. Chelsea wasn't sort of one of those top teams back then. They were kind of like the same kind of level as Fulham, if you like, when they were in the Premier League. But good stay. I didn't like the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge. I never did. Every time I was there as a steward, or I'd been there to go and watch a game, never enjoyed being in that stadium at all. But Fulham was really, really good. I went to White Hart Lane a couple of times, and that wasn't too bad back in the old days. Where else have I been? I haven't been to Brentford. Yeah, I think that's about it for the London clubs. Yeah, never been up to Upton Park. I would have loved to have gone to Upton Park.
Yeah, people do rave about Upton Park. And just why I was bringing that up there is because I do find it interesting, because I think West Ham are the prime example of clubs that are now rebuilding or moving into new stadiums, and how everybody's just starting to get away from the community stadiums, and I think West Ham are a big proof of that. Ryno, of all the signings so far, obviously we don't know what's coming. So what's signing in the door at the moment? Who kind of excites you the most out of it?
Probably Onana for me. Just something I think we've lacked for a long, long time. We spoke about the physicality, and I've always loved, players like Patrick Vieira back in the day, the big midfield destroyers and that big physical presence. So I'm hoping he can sort of add a bit of that for us in the middle. I think, he's going to be really important for us and protecting that back four. And I'm surprised we got him, to be honest. I thought, I just didn't think we'd be, after Onana, I thought we'd be looking elsewhere for someone maybe a bit more creative. But there's definitely a hole there. We saw Kamara go injured last year, and in defensive midfielder is not something we've typically had. We had Tim Hiragbunam, who's since moved on, so there's definitely a hole there to be filled, and I'm excited to see Onana in there. I think it'll take him time, though. I think we've got to be patient with some of these new guys coming in. Your Barclays. I know Barclays been there before, but under a different regime. Bernachea. It's going to take them a while to adapt. So I think we just got to be patient and sort of understand that, it's going to be a little bit disjointed at the start is what I'm sort of thinking. So I'm just gearing up to just, it's not something we're typically good at, is it? Being patient, Villa fans.
No.
And sort of, I'm just getting the word out there now, boys. Just try and be patient the first few weeks and don't panic. If we lose the first game, like Newcastle last year, wasn't it? So it was panic stations at the start. But now I'm excited about Onana, but I do think there's going to be something big coming in. I've just got a feeling that, we're not done yet. Like Paddy said, there could be another 2 or 3 coming through the door. So I'm excited to see what we've got left as well.
And what about yourself, Paddy? Of the lads who've come in the door so far, who kind of do you think is probably the most important part of the system, or who do you expect to have the biggest season so far?
Well, I was kind of torn, and I before we come on there, I had Tej talking about his shirt and what number to get in the back of it, and I've always been very quick to nail my colours to the mast of who I wanted on, and it's usually a new player that I get on the back of my shirt.
Yeah,
but I'm just torn in the talent that we've brought through the door of who to get on it. But I'm particularly excited for Onana as well. I'm just looking forward to seeing him in a ball playing role, because Ryno correctly likens him to Patrick Vieira, because he's probably pacier than Patrick Vieira. He's probably not better on the ball than Patrick Vieira, but I think there's definite potential there to make him a box-to-box midfielder, and also the guy who will actually break up play when we have to defend a lead or whatever situation we're in. I think he's a player that's capable of adapting to any situation. I think he's very important for us on set pieces. If you watch the Belgium during the Euros, just that position he picks up on the edge of the 6-yard box, front post, and he's just unbelievable at getting just something on the ball to clear the danger on corners and set pieces. So that's something we've lacked for a long time. So we have that big rangy player to do that for us, and that's going to be fantastic. So if we get him and Mings back in, I would imagine our defending aerial set pieces is going to be phenomenal. But I think he's the kind of player that could add goals and assists to his game as well, like from attacking set pieces.
Definitely,
and
he believes that himself too.
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah. Just from listening to him talking about what his strong points or whatever, you can see he wants to improve and he wants to be better, and I think that's why he's here. I think that's what's motivating him. So he's coming to a management team that can really make something out of the player. But like as I said, I don't believe we're finished. I think there will be more players to come in that we can get excited about. João Felix hasn't gone away. We've also been linked with Baena from Spain as well. So is that replacement for Duran, or is that in addition to what we have? I don't know. But there's plenty more that can come in. But of what's come in, I think Onana is the one that really excited me when it happened.
Definitely. And Tess, we're getting a couple of players back that we missed for the whole season. So if we can get a few of them firing, it'll be almost like a couple of new signings for us. Well, the likes of Tyrone Mings, obviously, is there a long time, but we definitely missed his aerial presence at times. And look, I don't expect Tyrone Mings to be a regular starter at the beginning, but he's certainly someone you can bring on when you're going to hold on to a lead and trying to defend boxes. And when West Ham start pumping in tough corners, you're away in a tough game against the games that we've typically struggled against Wolves and the physical kind of teams. So I think having a Tyrone Mings to come in and defend boxes late on is a fantastic. And I was just wondering about Emi Buendia, Tess. I just wanted to see where you think he's at now since he's come back. And would you expect to see him feature much? And will he be like a new signing for us?
Emi Buendia would definitely be like a new signing for us. I really like him as a player. And I think at times before he got injured, it was... I think Coutinho was probably the favoured one ahead of him when Coutinho was fit. But Buendia in pre-season, since he's come back, he looks like a man on a mission. He looks like somebody who has really, really missed playing football. Just really missed being, even while he was injured, him and Tyrone, they were around the squad quite often, apart from when I think Tyrone went over to the US and did some rehab over there. But they were included in the squad, and you'd see them after the games. They'd be walking through the tunnel, coming back after a game with the squad. And in pre-season, he looks pretty sharp for somebody who's been out for 12 months. Is it 12 months he's been out? So I'm really excited to see Emi Buendia. I think he can contribute to the team. I think he will add a bit of that sort of nitty-gritty stuff that we need just behind the strikers. We know what he's about. We know that he's got good delivery, can score goals, create assists, somebody who is a really, really good player, in my opinion. So I do think it'd be like a new signing having someone like him. He offers something a bit different to sort of Morgan Rogers and these other players. And Diaby, for example, for where Diaby was playing before, you can see now that we've got players who may not be as expensive as Diaby, but they can actually do the job. They just as good at doing that job. They don't have his pace, of course, but they have other attributes that they can contribute. So, and I think Buendia will be one of those. Along with Kamara when Kamara comes back, right? So Kamara's going to come back as well this season. And when Kamara was playing, he allowed Dougie to go and do Dougie things. And when that was happening, Dougie was scoring goals and he was creating assists and he was playmaking. He was doing a lot of stuff when we had Kamara, so he will also be another one to come back and help stabilise our midfield as well.
Definitely, and like I'm not going to go into it today and make a lineup for next week because I think it'd be a bit unfair to ask you to predict lineups when it's a week out and we know there's probably going to be a bit of movement in the transfer market either way, incomings and outcomings. So I'm not going to ask you to predict a lineup today, but what I would like to ask you though is, like I was saying to Paddy there a couple of days ago, I don't actually think Ollie Watkins is going to start against West Ham personally. I said that a while back. I think he'll start against Arsenal. But say if Ollie Watkins does start against West Ham, right? And this is open to any of the Trevi. Do you see a place where JJ and Morgan Rogers can play in the same team together? And if you do, with Ollie in the team, and if you do, how would you make that work?
That's interesting.
Because they have a lot of similar attributes.
I think if you're going to make it... I think it's tough to squeeze them in together, but I think if you're going to play JJ and Rogers together with Ollie, I think Rogers probably goes a bit more central maybe and sort of sits as that supporting striker just behind the striker maybe. Whether that they're quite like for like, I would say. Rogers reminds me of Ollie Watkins in a lot of ways with his attributes, like his size and his speed. So I think there's a chance if Ollie Watkins doesn't start, I wouldn't be surprised to see Rogers start up front. Yeah. But I think they could make room, but I don't see JJ starting straight up. I still think he's coming back from a broken season last year, bad injury. I think they'll be taking it quite easy with JJ as well at the start, because we are sort of blessed in those positions with the wide sort of attacking players. So I think we've got enough players there to cover. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the game time works with Rogers and JJ, because we know what a talent JJ is, but we want to see him playing as well. We don't want to see his minutes stunted and not playing enough minutes. So yeah, fit them all in. It's going to be interesting.
I'd imagine he's going to go with. I'd imagine he's going to go with who we've been practicing with, right? So we've been practicing with McGinn up there with Rodgers I'm talking about just for the first game.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to go with that kind of lineup that we've been practicing with to start with, because they've been for the last 3 or 4 games. It's been Jhon, McGinn, and Rodgers at the top, right? And then bringing Ollie Watkins in probably for the following game.
Yeah.
Once he's had a bit of, he might get minutes against West Ham, but I'd imagine for the start, I think we might go close to what we've been starting with for the last few games. It looks as though they've been practicing certain things, and so I'd imagine that's going to be the way to go.
What about yourself, Paddy? When the season starts rolling, and Ollie Watkins is obviously, we know he's the number one. Whether he starts the first game or not, we don't know, but we know he will be the first choice. Do you see Rodgers and JJ playing together much, or do you think?
I think the bigger question here is if we've got Ollie Watkins firing and Rodgers doing well in behind him, what happened to John McGinn? We've got a club captain there that could find his position, very hard to hold down. And this is all part of Champions League football, where we're going to have to play horses for courses, and we play McGinn in certain situations, we play Ramsey in certain situations. It excites me with what we have at the moment, that it could be a case of where we've got JJ or McGinn on the left with Rodgers playing in behind the striker, because I think that's where he sees him, is that support play, that link play with the striker. He's got that little defence splitting pass in his bag, and he can score goals as well. So I think with a fully fit Watkins, it depends who we're playing, whether it's him or McGinn in behind, and then I guess it's up to the manager whether he goes with McGinn or JJ off the left, because it seems bizarre that we're talking about Jhon McGinn not being in the squad. Whatever about JJ, who's had a truncated season last season, he seems to be back to full fitness. We saw him make a lung busting run that we were used to in the Bilbao game, I think it was on Wednesday. And you just got to hope that we've got the old JJ back, because he has the capability of winning games for you and changing games off the bench if needs be.
Yeah, 100%. And Emery loves him. Like you could tell that from the very early door. What you say about who we play there, Paddy, I think that's a very important point, because I was thinking about this morning, and I was thinking, like there's certain teams like that I would probably put us better than. I don't think it's disrespectful to say that, but they still like to play football. The likes of Bournemouth and all that. Even Southampton coming up. Southampton tried to play football. And I think if we had the starting lineup of ball carriers like Ollie Watkins, Leon Bailey, Morgan Rodgers and JJ on the pitch against teams like that, we could cause some serious damage. And if you just have like Yuri and Onana sitting, or McGinn and Onana sitting, I think there's definitely probably situations where they can play together. But I think you're right. I don't think you're going to see it very often, but I think there will be certain games where he's just going to go and open the pitch up and go play football, lads. He done it last year in the Bournemouth game, and that's why I kind of used them as an example. I think it was 3-1 we beat them at Villa Park. We were absolutely sensational at times playing some of the football we were playing. Yeah. And with Jhon McGinn, I think it's a very good point. And that's, as you said, when you get to the Champions League level, that's going to be a question a lot of players are going to have. But I think he loves McGinn. I think McGinn is so versatile that McGinn, if he's not going to be nailed on for one place from McGinn, will be that guy who will play numerous positions to give other players a rest. So I think he's going to have to rest himself at times, but I do think you'll see McGinn in a lot of lineups still, whether that be as a holding midfielder or on the right, or even when he's bedding in players like the young lads and stuff, like a couple of the younger lads, getting them up to speed. I just think McGinn he'll find a place for McGinn. I think because until he plays himself out of that place, you know what I mean. I think we will find him in. And sorry, Tess, I was just going to say with JJ there. It will be interesting for JJ because he's going to come back with some serious hunger, because he had to sit in the sidelines and watch Morgan Rodgers come in and do what he did, and that's going to drive hunger in him. So I think that it's so positive to have that kind of competition between the two. Sorry, Tess, I didn't interrupt you.
No, sorry. I was just on that point that if we were to give Ollie a break in a match or two, I could see Rodgers and Ramsey playing together. Yeah. So maybe Rodgers up top, if anything, and then Ramsey coming in off the left. And just because, Ramsey, when he plays, when he was playing and he was having that really good season, he likes to do this sort of like 1-2 touch and go. And I think him and Rodgers could do a really good job in that kind of area towards the top of the pitch. So in that instance, I think they could probably work together. But if you had Ollie and Rodgers and Ramsey, I don't know, there might be a bit of an imbalance around there because they all like to sort of run a lot with the ball and stuff and get in each other's way. I don't know, but I think that might be a bit of a harder task than if we were giving Ollie a break for a game, for example. Then you could probably have Rodgers and Ramsey playing together and McGinn supporting as well.
It's definitely a fair point. And boys, do you think though, because obviously McGinn had to play a lot of the whole midfield role last year after Kamara got injured, and like I personally think McGinn played some of his best football on the right side for us. Could you see him competing with Bailey for certain games for that right hand side now that we have Onana and we've Tielemans and even Ross Barkley? Of course, we're forgetting about Ross Barkley as well. Ross Barkley can play a number of positions as well,
Yeah, it's like Paddy said, there's horses for courses, depending if you're away at Man City and want a bit more coverage or a bit more work out of, Leon Bailey, brilliant player, but he's improved going backwards, but he's probably not up to John McGinn's standard, is he, of tracking back and defending. So I definitely think, the formations and the players we'll be using will be quite fluid this year, and with the amount of games coming through, what it's like, injuries, suspensions, there's definitely room for McGinn to play out on that right instead of Bailey, and then bring Bailey on later in the game when teams are tired and you can stretch them. But John McGinn, like you say, his versatility is so important for us, and just his presence around the club, isn't he, club captain? And I love him being club captain as well. I just think he had a rough start when
he's grown into
first got the captaincy, but now he's come back and one of our most valuable players. So looking forward to see how he kicks on this season as well.
Isn't it so good that we're having this debate, this conversation at the moment, because we've got so many players to choose from, and they're all quality. We've actually got a quality squad at the moment. It's really good that we can have this conversation. We're talking about our captain not having his place as well at some points. How good is that?
And you're looking at the likes of Barkley and Onana, and like Barkley was only 5 million. So I mean, I've absolutely, after the season he had, I'm absolutely no doubt there would have been interest in him, and he could have probably went to a number of clubs. I'm not sure the level that he could have went at, but there definitely would have been Premier League clubs interested in him, especially at that price. And we know there was interest from Arsenal and Onana and stuff. But the fact that these players are looking at Villa and know that's where they want to go now, that's huge for the club, and it's something that we haven't really had for a long time. A lot of the big players who we've got in have come because of a certain reason. Like Ollie Watkins came because he knew Dean Smith. Ezri Konsa comes because he knows Dean Smith. And obviously there's a massive Emery factor there. Players are now looking on and watching Emery coming in and just elevating, not just one or two players. He's elevated a whole squad of players, probably beyond what I thought they were capable of. I won't lie. I think Paddy touched off it brilliantly earlier. I mean, Ollie Watkins obviously deserves a lot of credit for where he's got himself to, but Emery has changed a lot in his game too, like from when he was at Dean Smith or Gerrard, and he says this himself about the first thing Emery came and told him was stay in between the boxes. And John McGinn talks about how he feared his place was going to be gone as soon as Emery came on board, and Emery called him in and was just able to list off every fact and figure about his time at St Mirren and his other clubs, and said, you need to start scoring goals more. I'm not going to play you this week, but you're in the first game against United, but like that doesn't mean you're out of the running. You're back in to fight for your place the following week. And once John McGinn got back in, that was it. He went to a whole new level. There was a period, and I'd put my hand up and I lost faith in John McGinn for a little while, and Mr. Paddy Kelly was the first man to put me straight on that when he said, and Paddy was absolutely dead right, and so to see Emery elevating these players, and now to see the likes of Onana, Barkley want to come, and the rumours of like Alex Baena or Joe Felix, whoever it's going to be, like it's huge. Like, and to be able to have the confidence of a club to sell a record signing after a year, that'd be unheard of. Losing a Diaby would have broke the club like 2 or 3 years ago. The fan base, the morale of the fan base would have went like skydiving, would have given up. But we know that there's other players are going to come in, and if they don't, Emery will elevate one of the players that's there already to make sure we don't miss him so much. So there's a lot of positivity going into the season, and I see people like giving out saying, "Oh, we haven't improved the team. We haven't improved." We didn't need to improve the team. The team we needed to improve the squad. And that's why, I mean, people need to have a look at some of the benches we had to put out late in the season last year. And so anyone that says, oh, we haven't improved our first 11, and there's a lot of people saying, that's fair enough, maybe they're not, but all we need to do is match that first 11, because the problem was we had to play that same 11 over and over and over again, and that's not sustainable. So from a point of view of a transfer window, I think he's nailed it, as in he's got options everywhere now, can always bring in one or two star players that can elevate us again to that Champions League level, but we have to be happy how we're going into the season so far. And the only thing would concern me, and it's not a major negative, but I think it's a fair point. Like when we're losing Diaby and losing Douglas Luiz, we lost a lot of our goal contributions from last season, and that needs to be replaced. It has to be replaced. But on the flip side, I don't think we're going to concede as many goals as we did last year either. So, like, I think
just what you're saying there about being a squad game, it always reminds me of the story Martin O'Neill tells about the day they lost to Man United, and Fergie saying to him, "You've gone to the well with these players too many times. It's just impossible to do what you're doing with the same bunch of players."
Yeah,
like he played that season that we nearly got Champions League football with like 12 or 13 players is all that he could turn around, because we just didn't have the talent on the bench. Now we have the talent on the bench to compete. Now we've got backup in nearly every area to come on and change games for the better, or be it that defensively or attackingly. Whatever is required on any given day, we can now do that. And we haven't even really mentioned Leon Bailey or Jayden Philogene-Bidace, who are just,
exactly, 100%,
you just don't know what you're going to get from them. And to have, like, I can't imagine the two of them are going to play together at any given time. So to be able to switch that one up, and we haven't mentioned Sammy Illing Jr., who can also come in and change it up on the left-hand side.
Exactly, yeah.
So we now have a squad capable of going and competing with the big boys. I've often gone to games where we've been in it for 50, 60 minutes. I remember one game in particular at Manchester City where the game was at 0-0 and it was 50, 60 minutes. And you just look at the three substitutions they bring on and you go, what are we at here? It was just coming, and you could just see it. And you just slump into your seat and go, we just can't compete with what's just come onto the pitch. And sure enough, bang, bang, 2-0, game over. And, at this stage now, we have enough players in our armoury that if we go to West Ham next week and it's not working and Bailey's having an half day and McGinn isn't firing, we spring a JJ from the bench, we spring a Philogene-Bidace from the bench, we take off Matty Cash and we put on Nedeljkovic if it's that way, and all of a sudden you've changed the whole dynamic of the team, and that's all we've hoped for ever since that famous chat between Fergie and Martin O'Neill. We haven't had that option. We've had a few. We've had one or two strikers that we could bring off the bench, or maybe one ball player that could come in to the midfield and change things, but never the amount that we now face into this season with. And I think he needs, a pat on the back. We talk about, the Twitter is having a meltdown over the preseason. Like, you guys remember Steven Gerrard had a brilliant preseason and went to Australia and did really, really well. And look what happened when we got to play the main matches. It just fell apart. The preseason doesn't mean anything once next week kicks off. I wouldn't even read too much in. We got such a difficult game to start off with next week. The difficult couple of games because we got Arsenal at home as well. So this is not going to even itself out for a few weeks. But someone mentioned it there earlier on. Patience is the key thing here, because if we start getting on their back, that's when mistakes start to be made. And we've seen it. We've seen Tyrone Mings when he went through his bad period of having a mistake in every game and the fans being on his back. We've seen Robin Olsen, the fans been on his back. It just happens. I've been on the back of Ollie Watkins in the past because he's not taking on shots that he should be taking on. Ollie Watkins 2 years ago doesn't take on that shot against Holland in the last kick of the game in the Euros. And there he is now doing it because we've developed this player. Leon Bailey absolutely frustrated me for the first 18 months of his Villa career. Look at him now. So it's a question of getting behind these players and seeing what they're capable of and enjoying the ride, because this is just like, you know me well, but I always have a match plan that I'm going over to see. I have nothing booked. I have a season ticket and nothing booked. because I just want to go to Champions League football.
Yeah.
I just want to see this and experience this just once.
Embrace
That's all I ever wanted was just once. Now I know I'm going to get a taste for it, and I really I was at Manchester City's first ever Champions League game against Napoli, and I'm looking forward to comparing the two when I go to Villa Park when we play. I've been to loads of Celtic games in the Champions League. I went to see Barcelona play Lyon in the Champions League at the Camp Nou years ago. So I'm looking at I know what Villa Park can bring and what it can make of a player, and to get into this epic season with that Champions League music and the stadium full and absolutely rocking. There's going to be absolutely nothing like this. And if we can be patient up until then, I think that atmosphere on Champions League nights will lead into those 5:30 kickoffs on a Saturday. I think the atmosphere is going to be incredible against Arsenal. I'm kind of annoyed that I won't be getting to that one, but it is what it is. But I happily forego everything for the first few months just to get to a couple of Champions League games, because this is just everything we've lived for.
Fantastic, yeah. I just that's what I like, Paddy. A nice burst of positivity onto the podcast. Exactly that, and Paddy. You make a right point. It's people have to remember that, like, and obviously we hope that it's going to be continuous now, and obviously we've got the right man in charge, but you have to embrace it now because it may not happen. Look at Newcastle, Newcastle, they got smashed for not getting out of the group stage. But imagine like that memory that they all have that night that they beat PSG at St. James's and stuff. And okay, they didn't get out of the group and they kind of got mocked a little bit by it, but that like those nights are way more important. That's what they're going to look back and remember. Like,
and those fans are not mocking that. These are fans that listen to the last previous generation who remembered them playing in the Champions League in the 90s and are telling them how epic it was in St. James's Park. You know, with the Gallagate end on fire when they were playing Champions League football, and they got to experience it last year.
Yeah,
this is our turn now, and it's just, I'm living for it. I really am. I'm absolutely dying just to see this just once, to know what our fans can do and get behind the team, and to hear that music being played at Villa Park. I reckon we just burst into tears.
I can't wait to. I'll be up watching it. You know, our games are on normally. Well, Spud gets them a little bit earlier before his bedtime, but normally for Ryno and I, it's normally about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and if we're lucky, then it might be you might get a midnight kickoff or something like that, and we try to watch literally every single Villa game. Just on the positivity side, there are a lot of things that have been happening at the club, Paddy, and I thought rather than ask you a negative question, which was going to be about referees, I thought lots is happening at the football club at the moment. You know, we're a Champions League club. We got to a semi-final of a European competition. But just recently, in terms of what the club are doing, we look like we've become a big club again in terms of the marketing that we have, the jerseys we've got now. There are some, obviously, other questionable talking points, but I didn't want to focus on them today. But also the release of the football kit, the social media, what we're seeing with the club, etc. Can I ask what your thoughts are on how the club is progressing in that positive way?
Well, I think there's so many negative things we can say, and there's a lot of fan opinion about what Chris Hegg has done since he came in. But he came in with the remit of making us a big club, and not obviously single-handedly. Us becoming a big club depends on what's happening on the pitch, and it's up to him to row in behind what's going on the pitch and make us become a big club off the pitch. I think some decisions were made were questioned. The not knocking the North Stand was questioned, and me at the time was bitterly disappointed that wasn't done. Now I'm looking at it going, what a great decision that was, that we will have a full Villa Park for our maiden season into Champions League football. We're going to have our full complement. Nobody's discommoded. There will be additional tickets there for people to buy this season. There's obviously a little bit of movement with season tickets and things like that to get more bodies in. These are all things that needed to be done. Now, could some of them have been done better? Yeah, absolutely. But I think in general, taking those minor negatives out of there, I think when we sit back at the end of this season and talk to those players or those fans that are annoyed that they lost the whole suite, that they moved a little bit, within the stadium that, to make room for the additional seats and stuff like that. I think the vast majority, some people will be automatically negative anyway, but I think most of the people will put their hand on their heart and go, that was all done the right way. It was done properly. It was magic. It was a season to remember. And the negatives that were there will be long forgotten. And I think people are just going to really enjoy this roller coaster, and it will be a roller coaster because someone will probably rock up and spank us on the Champions League night, be that home or away, and we'll just have to take that, and that's just part and parcel for how it is. We saw yesterday Dortmund scoring 2 in quick succession. That can very easily happen when you play a very decent side and a very well drilled side, and a side that's been built that way for years. We've been very clever bringing in players with Champions League experience as well, which is great. Big competition experience as well, playing in the Euros, playing in World Cups. So there's a lot to be positive about. With regards to shorts, I would go as far as saying as that launch video is the best launch video I have ever seen. Now I know I'm a little bit biased because it's Aston Villa, but the magic that was put into that video, you were watching it 5 or 6 times later and still picking little bits out of it, like the traffic cone crossing the road and things like
Savo's
that.
bandana.
Savo's bandana, yeah. No, it's just special. And I'm reliably informed that there's a very special third short on the way, and I hope people buy into it because the colour might not be to everybody's taste, and what it represents might not be to everybody's taste, but it promises to be a fairly special collector's item that I think everybody who appreciates the heritage of the club will buy, providing they haven't changed their mind since I was told about this short. But I kind of expected it to be launched this week because in the past we've either had white or light blue shorts, and that would have obviously clashed with West Ham, and we would have had to have the third short out by this week, which leads me to believe that the away kit might be something completely different as well this season. So it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting few weeks with regards to kit. But look, it's Chris Heck has got a great deal with Betano. Whatever you make of betting companies, we have to be on that trail for the next couple of years while that bag of money is still there. We have to take it because it would be doing us a disservice if they don't. The Trade Nation deal, they're all the biggest deals that the club has ever got. We've a lot of new partners in and within the ground as well, which is great. Look, I find when you look at all the positives, it's very hard to be negative. I completely understand that fans are moved away from what, and I hope the club have done enough. We haven't heard too much about it since, but I hope the club have done enough to move people back closer together or beside each other the way they were previously. There were some mistakes made, absolutely, but I think everybody is going to be absolutely buying into this by the end of this season.
Yeah, the club shop pictures look pretty good too as well.
That brick sculpture, the line with all the captains of the club on it is absolute class, and it's fantastic marketing too. Just like that, it looks really well. And they even got a bit lucky with the campaign of trying to figure out who the guy was on the advertising video. That elevated things to a massive level as well. Ryno, Paddy, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but before we go, I just want, because the Champions League, obviously, we're coming into a season of Champions League, and I think we need to embrace that as much as we can. But I don't know if you lads agree with me, but obviously there's a lot about this new format and stuff. But I actually think the new format's going to suit us because of being an unseeded team. The last thing we need to be doing is going into a group of 4 with 3 brilliant teams, like what happened to Newcastle last year, where they got Dortmund, Paris Saint-Germain and AC Milan. No, it's brilliant from a travelling fan point of view, but from a chance of getting out of the groups, obviously it was going to be difficult for them, and they made a good fist of it. They were quite unlucky. But this new format, Ryno, we play 8 games, 8 separate games, 2 from each pot. So we'll play a couple of teams in and around us, and obviously we're going to still get to go and possibly have that big night at the Bernabeu or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Have you had much of a look at this new format, and what's your thoughts on it overall?
Yeah, I've had a quick glance at it, and I like the change. But like you say, I definitely want the mix of, competitive games, but I definitely won those blockbuster games as well. Like, say, first time in Champions League, I won those nights. I want to see those players lined up at Villa Park and the anthem going off. And imagine seeing Villa at, the Nou Camp or, one of these massive stadiums. It's just, I'll be pinching myself on the day, or the morning. But yeah, I like the new format. I think, the previous format, you could end up in, a group of death, and then pretty much you're looking at pretty straight sets going out, aren't you? So I think this is a much better format and suits a lot of the less favoured teams in the Champions League and gives people a better chance of progressing and makes it a bit more of an even comp, which I'm looking forward to. But I just can't wait for it now. Like Paddy's just summed it up perfectly. Just got, just being at Villa Park, you're in that anthem, and just the players lined up. I've always had to watch other teams in the Champions League. Growing up, you've always watched your Man Uniteds, your Arsenals, your Liverpools, but it's going to be Aston Villa this season, and yeah, I'm just buzzing for it, to be honest.
It is special, and it yes, the World Cup and all that we know is kind of probably the pinnacle of the football, but that's changed. I think Champions League is now the pinnacle of professional football. It's probably the place where everyone wants to play now. And the thought now of Mbappe having to climb out of Matty Cash's pocket after 90 minutes now is really, I'm really looking forward to that. The last thing I was going to ask you, lads, Tess, I'll start with you, because Newcastle obviously done very well to get into the Champions League, but it's almost like they got in a little bit too early. They were very inexperienced going in there, both Eddie Howe as a manager and maybe some of the players and as a club maybe. We obviously have had this campaign in the Europa Conference now. The benefits for our players, I think, is going to be huge. Yes, the competition isn't as strong. We know that. There's still some very good sides. But from a personal point of view, for the likes of Ollie Watkins, Ezri Konsa, just learning what they need to do for themselves for recovery between games that quickly and stuff, I think that's going to benefit us massively. Playing on a Thursday and a Sunday, so now they're much more experienced in what they need to do to get themselves up to speed in 4 days of recovery. Because everybody will be different. Like Ollie Watkins might take 2 days in the massage crowd. Ezri Konsa might be ready to play the following day. Everyone's body is different, and Newcastle probably had to find that out as they go. Whereas now we're very much geared towards it, and you see that as a big benefit going forward, Tess. That conference.
Yeah, not only is just a big benefit, because it's not only the playing in Europe last season, it was international football. So Ollie's playing international football, Ezri Konsa's playing international football. We've got players like Ian Matson, who played in the Champions League final, Champions League experience, a lot of international players, Yuri Tillemans, Onana, people like Luca Dean who have done it before as well. We've got a wealth of experience within our squad, and I think we're just a little bit better set up to be a bit more successful than because Newcastle did really well to get to the Champions League, in my opinion. I thought they did really well that season to get there, but when they were in the Champions League, they had a lot of injury problems, and I don't know if they had the squad to manage playing league football, cups, and then Champions League as well. And I think for us, we were a little bit like that towards the end of the season when we were playing Conference League, because we had our injuries and our squad was quite thin. We were bringing on Callum Chambers a few minutes before the end and all these sorts of things to come in and play. I think we're set up now to have a good go at it in the Champions League this season. I think we've got a squad where we can rest players for certain games and then bring the big guns in for the Champions League, because that's what Emery will more than likely want to do, right? He's going to want to be really successful in the Champions League and in the Premier League. And then he might make some alterations for some of the League Cup games or the FA Cup. Yeah. I think he still wants to win one of those trophies, mind. I think he wants a trophy this season. But I think we're a little bit better set up at the moment than what Newcastle were when they had their Champions League campaign.
Yeah, no, and you make some very good points there, and I have to agree with you. And Paddy, I'll give you the last word on this before we wrap up. Just in your own opinion on that, what we're just discussing there about what benefits the conferences we can take going into the Champions League now. What do you think are the huge benefits?
Well, the main benefits is the players who are there that wouldn't have ordinarily been playing in these competitions previously now have the experience. Now have the tactical nous that is expected of them in these. Well, basically, it was all a learning process. we were probably a few players short of going on and winning it in the end, which was unfortunate. But a really, really good and positive experience for the club. We got to the semi-final. We there were some of those, like even going back to the group stage where we had to get a late winner from John McGinn against Mostar.
Yeah.
There was a whole load of learning went on within the whole competition. And this was just all a stepping stone towards where we are. Like, nobody realistically, obviously, we want to win this tournament, but nobody realistically is going, we're going to win the Champions League. But this is absolutely huge for our club financially, and in order to spread the word of who are these majestically named team from Aston, who are they, where do they come from, how come we've never heard of them before, and all of a sudden we've a whole new band of fans. And wouldn't it be great to walk around the world and see someone who's not from Birmingham walking around their home city in a Villa shirt? And that's ultimately what it's all about. You go back to what you spoke to about the changes off the pitch. This is what it's all about. It's all about making new fans. Whatever Lions club you're in around the world, getting locals on board with Aston Villa. And that's how it all comes about. If you listen to any of the stories of the American Lions clubs and the people who are members there, some of them were just, and we have one here in our Lions club in Limerick that just enjoyed the fun we were having one Sunday afternoon. And now he's a Villa fan who goes to matches regularly and comes in to watch games with us in the pub. This guy had no interest in football 4 years ago. And now he's just one of us.
Yeah.
So, these things come about all throughout the world, and this is how you grow a fan base. By a team doing well, be playing at the top table. As you say, imagine us walking out at the Bernabeu or the Nou Camp or the Stadio Olimpico or the Allianz Arena. This is what dreams are made of for us. And yeah, you're right to rub your hands, Tess. This is what we all wanted. I don't think I'll ever get bored of it. It absolutely amazes me to see, I still call it the Charity Shield yesterday with empty seats. I can't for the life of me ever see a day that a Villa, no matter how big Villa get, I just don't see a day that we've got. Even in the period of whatever it was, 7 or 8 years where we went 5 times, we sold out every time we went.
Yeah.
Be it playoff finals, Carabao Cup, FA Cup. We're just a big club, and our sleeping giant is well and truly awake, and it's up to us now to do what we can on the pitch to bring more fans throughout the world and make us an even bigger club, because we've won it before against all odds. As I said, I'm not expecting us to do it again, but I am expecting us to come out of this group, because it's heavily weighted for a decent side to come out of it, because you can have 2 or 3 poor games and still qualify out of this tournament.
Yeah.
So let's embrace it and let's enjoy it, and starting with next Saturday, I think this is just the beginning, and just be patient, be positive, and enjoy this for what it is, which is an absolute treat, and it's only come along once since 1982. So let's go and enjoy this, or should I say since 1983, because we obviously qualified for that one too.
Yeah.
But this is our first time in a group phase of a Champions League where it wasn't a knockout situation. So it's a whole new ball game for us. And yeah, to answer your question, last year's exploits traveling throughout Europe is just going to make us stronger for those that wouldn't ordinarily have experienced that before.
No, fantastic. And I think that's a great way to finish up on that positivity. And it is a Champions League year, and it is Aston Villa in the Champions League, and it's still mind-boggling, to be honest. But Paddy, we're very grateful for the time, for you giving your time to us today, mate. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. And we hope you'll come on again down the line and have a chat with us. I'm not sure there'll be many people on this podcast who wouldn't have listening to this podcast that wouldn't have heard of your podcast. But out of respect, I'd like to give you the chance to give it a bit of a plug anyway, Paddy. But so if anyone wants to get in touch with you or find your work, whereabouts can they find you?
Yeah, well, obviously our podcast is For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. There's myself and Neil Dunworth here in Ireland that you may have seen in the last few days. There's a load of new guests coming on. with Neil. We had Josh Norris on Friday night as well, and I think he has a couple coming on this week as well. So there's a lot happening. You'll get them on Twitter at Love McGrath Pod. They're on obviously YouTube and all of the podcast platforms. And we're always happy to have new people coming in there. We're going for 5 years. I can honestly say it doesn't feel like 5 years because each and every podcast has been an incredible journey, because it's crazy the messages you get from all around the world after saying something that resonates with somebody somewhere. And look, I admire you guys. It's what you guys do cannot be understated, because you've got to watch Villa in the middle of the night, and for anyone based in where we are in England or Ireland, that watch the preseason friendlies, got a little taste of what you guys have to put up with on a weekly basis. So I tip my hat to you guys, because you're absolute superstars. Because I got up on the Wednesday night. I'm not a really good sleeper anyway, so I stayed awake, watched the match, and then Thursday is just a drag, and I don't know how you guys do it. So fair play to you, fair play to anybody around the world that has to get up in the middle of the night to watch Villa. It's an infliction, but I hope that this season will make it all worthwhile, and you'll enjoy this absolute ride that we're on. And I always love going on to other people's podcasts. I know I have to watch my P's and Q's, because I'm quite likely to throw a few swear words out there, and I think I've got so I'll pat myself on the back for that one. But what you guys do is great for you so many people there in Australia. There's a lot of Lions clubs that people can join. If you're ever in doubt, reach out to me or Spud, and we'll point you in the right direction to your local Lions club. The Lions Club network is absolutely phenomenal for us Villa fans that are overseas. And keep up the good work, keep the podcast going, and keep up the positivity. We can be negative when things happen in games, but I think in general, to be not positive about what's happening to our majestic club is a travesty at this stage. So go and enjoy it, and enjoy the ride of this season.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Paddy. We really, really appreciate it, mate. And Tess, do you want to just give the listeners a whack of where they can find our socials and the podcast itself, for the people not watching on YouTube, the people listening on Spotify and Apple? Can you just give them a breakdown where they can find us on the socials and stuff?
Yeah, so also want to say thank you to you, Paddy. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, because I know there are a lot of Australian supporters of Aston Villa who are listen to your podcast regularly. And what we're trying to do here is connect with those Australian supporters and try and build a network out here so that we can all communicate, and we all have one thing in common, and that's to love Aston Villa. So really thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk to us. Now, for all of those who listen to the podcast or who are listening for the first time, you can find us on social media at Pride Down Under. Mainly on X is where we're operating most of the time, but also Villa Pride Down Under on Instagram. We're also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. Have I missed any? No, we're not on TikTok.
We've got a Facebook page.
We've got a Facebook page, so the Villa Pride Down Under Facebook page. Come and hit that like, subscribe button, and come and join the fun. It's going to be an immense season. And finally, just a big shout out to Neil as well. I was in Neil's DMs quite a lot, asking him questions about technical bits and pieces, and he was nothing but fantastic to me. He's never met me in person, and I was asking him all these questions, and he was so supportive, and looking forward to getting him on the pod, hopefully at some point when he's not doing 4 or 5 of his own per day.
Ryno, any last words, my man?
You can get me at Ryno_Watkins, and just for everyone who listens or watches, we really appreciate it. Get in touch with us as well with any questions or anything for the upcoming season. And thank you very much for coming on, Paddy. It's been brilliant chatting with you, mate.
No, it's been great talking to you guys. It's great to sit and just shoot the breeze about Aston Villa. It's an absolute pleasure to do it with people in a pub in your own town, but to do it from people from the other side of the world, it's an absolute pleasure. And thanks so much for having me on.
A pleasure was all ours, Paddy. And for anyone listening, watching, hit that like, hit that subscribe. I always say this every week. It doesn't cost anything, but it helps the podcast massively. I don't think people realize how much even giving a thumbs up helps spread that podcast out for us. And the interaction is getting good. We're getting a lot of comments on YouTube. We're getting a lot more subscribers and likes. So thanks to every one of you for that, because this is what we do it for people to like and enjoy it. And always reach out to us if there's any topics or interactions you like, because we're very open to that as well. And Paddy, I'll let you wrap up.
Where can they find you?
Sorry?
Where can they find you, Spud? Where can they find you?
At AVSC Spud. Pretty much on Twitter or Facebook. It's Mark Spud Holmes. In homage to Paddy, we may as well say all that's left to say is up the villa.
Up the villa.
Up the villa.